The conference room went silent the moment I walked through the door at 9:47 a.m. 47 minutes late to the most important meeting of the quarter. The meeting where our new CEO was being introduced to department heads for the first time. Every single person at that table turned to stare at me. And Brian Mitchell, my direct manager and the man who'd spent 3 years making my professional life miserable, smiled like Christmas had come early. "Fashionably late, Sarah," he said, voice dripping with theatrical concern. "We were just introducing ourselves to Mr. Hendricks. I'm sure he's very interested to meet our consistently tardy logistics coordinator." Scattered uncomfortable laughter around the table. I felt my face flush. Started to apologize. Started to explain. And then the man sitting at the head of the table, the man I'd assumed was just another executive in an expensive suit, looked up at me and smiled. Not a polite executive smile. A genuine one. "Actually," he said quietly, "Sarah's late because she was helping me. Specifically, she was the only person in this entire building who stopped to ask if I needed assistance when I was clearly lost, clearly frustrated, and clearly not dressed like I belonged here." The room went so quiet you could hear the ventilation system humming. Brian's smirk flickered. "I'm sorry, Mr. Hendricks, I don't understand. Let me clarify. This morning, I arrived at this building at 7:30 a.m. I wanted to walk through the facility before any meetings. See how things actually operate when leadership isn't watching. So I dressed casually. Jeans, work boots, a plain shirt. Wanted to be invisible." He looked directly at me. I was in the basement level. Near the mechanical systems. Trying to find my way back to the executive floor. And I was lost. Genuinely turned around. I passed approximately 37 employees during the 40 minutes I was wandering around down there. He paused. Let that number sink in. 37 people who work for this company saw me. A man they didn't recognize, looking confused, carrying a notebook, clearly not sure where I was going. And 36 of them walked right past me. Didn't make eye contact. Didn't ask if I needed help. Just kept moving. Another pause. Longer this time. Sarah was number 37. She stopped. Asked if I was lost. When I said yes, she didn't just point me toward the elevators. She walked me there personally. Asked if I was new to the building. Told me about the confusing layout. Mentioned that the signage in the basement is terrible and the company really should fix it. I remembered that conversation. I'd been running late already. Had a meeting at 9 o'clock that I knew I'd miss. But there was this guy, maybe late 50s, gray hair, work clothes, looking genuinely lost and frustrated. And I couldn't just walk past someone who needed help. So I'd stopped. Walked him to the elevator. We'd chatted for maybe 5 minutes. He'd been kind. Funny. Asked about my job. Seemed genuinely interested when I explained logistics coordination. When we got to the elevator, he'd thanked me. Said it was nice to meet someone who actually cared about people instead of just rushing past them. I'd wished him a good day and then run toward my desk, knowing I was going to miss Brian's meeting but figuring helping a lost maintenance contractor was more important than being precisely on time. Turns out it wasn't a maintenance contractor. Mr. Hendricks continued. Sarah also did something else. When we got to the elevator, I mentioned I was hungry. Said I'd gotten here too early and the cafeteria wasn't open yet. Sarah immediately offered me half her lunch. Which she'd packed from home. Her own food. Insisted I take it because she said she'd packed extra anyway. He pulled something out of his briefcase. A lunch container. The same one I'd packed that morning. I tried to refuse. She wouldn't let me. Said nobody should have to work on an empty stomach. So I took her lunch. Ate it in my office at 8 a.m. And I spent the next hour thinking about what kind of company culture creates employees who are so kind to strangers that they'll give away their own food. Brian had gone pale. Sir, I'm sure Sarah meant well, but nothing, Brian. Let me finish. After Sarah helped me, I continued my walkthrough. Watched how employees interact when they don't think leadership is watching. Observed how managers speak to their teams. How people treat each other in hallways and break rooms. He pulled out a small notebook. Flipped it open. At 8:23 a.m., I watched a manager, I believe from the sales department, berate an assistant for bringing the wrong coffee order. Loud enough that everyone in the break room heard. The assistant apologized repeatedly. The manager continued berating her for another 2 minutes. At 8:45, I observed a department head walk past an employee who dropped a stack of files in the hallway. The department head stepped over the papers without offering to help. The employee was on her knees picking them up alone for 5 minutes. At 9:15, I sat in on what I thought was a team meeting. Turned out to be a manager publicly criticizing an employee's performance in front of their peers. No constructive feedback. Just humiliation disguised as accountability. He closed the notebook. Looked around the table. And then at 9:47, Sarah walks into this room. Late because she helped me. And the first thing she hears is mockery from her manager in front of her peers and the new CEO. Tell me, Brian, does publicly shaming employees for being late typically improve their performance? Or does it just establish that this is a workplace where people are disposable? Brian opened his mouth. Closed it. I was just making a light comment, sir. There was nothing light about it. You were establishing dominance. Making sure everyone in this room understood that Sarah was in trouble and you had the power to humiliate her for it. That's not leadership. That's ego protection. The tension in the room was suffocating. I wanted to disappear. But Mr. Hendricks wasn't finished. Here's what I learned in my first 3 hours at this company. Most of your employees treat each other with indifference at best and cruelty at worst. They walk past people who need help. They prioritize appearing busy over being helpful. They mock each other for minor infractions while ignoring major cultural problems. He looked directly at me again. Except for Sarah. Who stopped? Who helped? Who gave up her own lunch to help a stranger? And who showed up to this meeting 47 minutes late because she prioritized basic human decency over punctuality? He turned back to Brian. So let me be very clear about something. Sarah is not in trouble for being late today. She's being recognized for having the exact values this company needs more of. And Brian, you and I are going to have a much longer conversation later about your management approach and whether it aligns with the culture I'm here to build. The room stayed silent. Brian looked like he'd been slapped. Mr. Hendricks stood up. This meeting is adjourned. Department heads, you'll receive new meeting invitations for individual sessions this week. I want to talk to each of you about how you lead your teams and how you treat the people who report to you. He looked at me one more time. Sarah, please stay. I'd like to talk to you for a few minutes. Everyone else filed out. Brian avoided eye contact with me completely. I could see his jaw clenched as he left. When the room cleared, Mr. Hendricks sat back down. Gestured for me to sit. I'm sorry if that was uncomfortable, he said. But I meant every word. Thank you for helping me this morning. I didn't know who you were. I just saw someone who needed help. Exactly. That's what made it meaningful. You helped because it was the right thing to do, not because you thought it would benefit you. He pulled out a business card. Slid it across the table. My name is David Hendricks. I'm the new CEO, as you now know. I was brought in specifically to turn around the culture here. The board believes this company has a talent problem. Too much turnover. Too many complaints. Too many good people leaving for competitors. I nodded. I'd been considering leaving myself. But after this morning, I don't think we have a talent problem. I think we have a leadership problem. We have managers who treat people like Brian just treated you. And we have employees who've learned to keep their heads down and not help each other because kindness isn't valued here. It's been getting worse, I admitted. When I started 3 years ago, people were friendlier. More collaborative. Lately it feels like everyone's just trying to survive and not get noticed. Tell me about Brian. How long have you reported to him? 3 years. Since I started. How would you describe his management style? I hesitated. You don't badmouth your boss to the CEO. That's career suicide. It's okay, David said gently. I'm asking because I need to understand what's actually happening here. Not what the organizational charts say. What's real? So I told him. Not everything. But enough. I told him about Brian's habit of criticizing people publicly but never praising them. About how he took credit for his team's successes but blamed individuals for any failures. About how he'd blocked 3 different people from transferring to other departments because he said they were too valuable to lose, even though they were miserable. About how he'd denied my request for professional development training twice, saying it wasn't in the budget, and then sent his favorite team member to a week-long conference in California. About how he frequently made comments about people's appearance, attendance, or personal lives disguised as friendly observations that were actually veiled criticisms. He's not the only manager like this, I added. There are several who operate the same way. But Brian's the most consistent about it. David took notes. Asked clarifying questions. Listened without interrupting. Sarah, I want to ask you something. If you could change 3 things about this company's culture, what would they be? I thought about it. First, I'd make it safe for people to speak up when something's wrong without fear of retaliation. Right now, if you complain, you're labeled as not a team player and your career stalls. Second, I'd create actual accountability for managers. Not just for meeting numbers, but for how they treat people. Because right now, as long as your department hits targets, nobody cares if your employees are miserable. Third, I'd reward people for helping each other. Right now, all the incentives are individual. Your performance review, your bonus, your promotion chances, they're all based on your personal metrics. So nobody helps anyone else because there's no benefit to it. David smiled. Those are excellent observations. And they're exactly the kind of cultural problems I was brought here to fix. Can I ask you another question? Of course. Would you be interested in joining a culture transformation task force? Small group. Maybe 5 or 6 people from different departments and levels. Your job would be to honestly assess what's broken, recommend solutions, and help me implement changes. It would be additional work on top of your current role, at least initially. But it would also give you direct access to me and the executive team. I stared at him. You want me on a task force? I'm a logistics coordinator. You're someone who stops to help people. Who gives away her lunch to strangers. Who has clear ideas about what's wrong and how to fix it. That's exactly who I need advising me. Not just executives who've learned to tell me what they think I want to hear. Brian won't like this. Brian doesn't get a vote. And frankly, Sarah, after today, I'm not convinced Brian should be managing people at all. But that's a separate conversation. I'm asking if you're interested in helping me rebuild the culture here. I thought about the past 3 years. The frustration. The feeling of being undervalued. The constant stress of working for someone who seemed to enjoy making people feel small. Yes, I said. I'm interested. Excellent. I'll have HR reach out about the details. One more thing. You mentioned Brian blocked transfer requests. Where did you want to transfer to? Operations strategy. I have ideas about how to improve our logistics workflows, but my current role doesn't give me authority to implement anything. I've been trying to move into a more strategic position for over a year. David made a note. Let me look into that. No promises, but if your ideas are solid and you have the capability, there's no reason you should be blocked from advancing. The Culture Transformation Task Force started meeting the following week. 6 of us total. 1 person from each major department. Mix of levels from coordinator to senior manager. David led the first few meetings personally, then handed facilitation to us. Our mandate was simple: identify cultural problems, recommend solutions, and help implement changes. We spent the first month just documenting issues, conducting anonymous surveys, holding listening sessions, collecting stories from employees about what wasn't working. The results were devastating. 73% of employees said they didn't trust their direct managers. 68% said they'd witnessed or experienced bullying or harassment. 81% said there was no real accountability for bad management behavior. We compiled everything into a comprehensive report, presented it to David and the executive team. Some executives were defensive, argued the data was exaggerated or that employees were just complaining. David shut that down immediately. This is what your employees are telling us. You can either accept that we have a cultural crisis and commit to fixing it, or you can find somewhere else to work. But I won't lead a company that treats people this way. That got everyone's attention. We spent the next 3 months implementing changes. New management accountability systems. Quarterly 360-degree reviews where employees could anonymously rate their managers. Poor ratings triggered mandatory coaching. Consistently poor ratings triggered removal from management. New policies around retaliation. Zero tolerance. If you reported a problem and faced any negative consequences, that was an immediate investigation. Managers who retaliated were terminated. New incentive structures that rewarded collaboration. Part of everyone's bonus was now tied to peer feedback about helpfulness and teamwork. New professional development policies. Every employee got a training budget. Managers couldn't block it. And new hiring and promotion criteria. Cultural fit and people skills were weighted equally with technical competence. The changes were uncomfortable. Several managers quit rather than adapt, including 2 senior leaders who'd been with the company for over a decade. Brian didn't quit. But 3 months after the new accountability systems launched, he was quietly reassigned to an individual contributor role. No direct reports. No management authority. Just a senior analyst position where he couldn't damage anyone else's career. I heard through the grapevine that his 360 reviews had been catastrophic. 12 out of 15 team members had rated him poorly on every single leadership dimension. He lasted another 4 months in the new role before resigning. 6 months after that conference room meeting, I was promoted to Operations Strategy Manager. The role I'd been trying to get for over a year. David personally delivered the news. Your logistics optimization proposal was the best strategic thinking I've seen from anyone at your level. Actually, at any level. You're wasted in coordination. Let's see what you can build with actual authority. The new role came with a 40% salary increase and a small team of my own. 3 people who reported to me. Who I was determined to lead the way I'd wished Brian had led me. A year after that, the employee engagement scores had improved by 32 percentage points. Turnover had dropped by half. And the company was being recognized by industry publications as a best place to work. David asked me to speak at an all-hands meeting about the culture transformation. Share my perspective on what had changed. I talked about that morning. About being late to the CEO meeting. About being mocked by Brian. About David defending me and using that moment to start changing everything. I was 47 minutes late because I stopped to help someone, I told the audience. And I almost didn't stop. Because in the culture we had back then, helping people wasn't valued. Moving fast was valued. Looking busy was valued. But actually caring about another human being? That was seen as a distraction. What David did that day was tell everyone that values matter more than appearances. That how we treat each other matters more than perfect punctuality. That kindness isn't a weakness, it's a strength. And over the past 18 months, I've watched this company become a place where people actually help each other. Where managers are held accountable for being good leaders, not just hitting numbers. Where you can speak up without fear. where being decent to each other is the baseline expectation. None of us are perfect. We still have problems. But we're trying. And that's what culture change actually looks like. Not a single grand gesture, but hundreds of small decisions to be better. After the meeting, several people approached me. Thanked me for speaking up. Shared their own stories about how things had improved. One woman, someone I didn't know well, pulled me aside. I was one of the 36 people who walked past David that morning. I saw him. He looked lost. And I kept walking because I was late and I didn't think it was my job to help random contractors. I think about that a lot now. How close I came to being just another person who didn't care. You're here now, I said. That's what matters. 2 years after the conference room incident, David called me into his office. Different office now. The company had grown. We'd expanded into new markets. Hired 200 new employees. Sarah, I want to talk to you about your career trajectory. Okay. You've been exceptional in the operations strategy role. You've improved efficiency across 3 departments. You've mentored 4 team members who've been promoted. And you've become one of the strongest cultural advocates in the company. Thank you. I'm creating a new position. VP of Operations and Culture. It's a hybrid role. Half operations strategy, half cultural leadership. Reporting directly to me. I want you to take it. I stared at him. VP? David, I'm 31 years old. I was a coordinator 2 years ago. And you've proven you can lead. Not just manage processes, but actually develop people and strengthen culture. That's rare. And it's exactly what we need as we scale. There are people with more experience. There are people with more years in corporate roles. That's not the same as more experience doing what actually matters. Sarah, you stopped to help a stranger when you had no reason to think it would benefit you. You spoke honestly about cultural problems when it would have been safer to stay quiet. You've led your team with the exact values we're trying to build across the company. That's the experience I need. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Unless you have concerns I should know about. I thought about it. Thought about the scared coordinator who'd walked into that conference room 2 years ago expecting to be humiliated for being late. Who'd instead watched the CEO defend her and use that moment to start rebuilding everything. I have one concern, I said finally. I don't want to become the kind of leader who forgets what it was like to be at the bottom. Who stops seeing people. Who gets so focused on strategy and numbers that I walk past someone who needs help. David smiled. Sarah, if you ever become that kind of leader, I'll fire you personally. But I don't think you will. Because that's not who you are fundamentally. You're the person who stops. And that won't change because you have a bigger title. Then yes. I'll take the role. Today, I'm VP of Operations and Culture at a company with 600 employees across 4 locations. We're consistently ranked as one of the best employers in our industry. Our retention rates are among the highest in the sector. And our culture is something people talk about in job interviews as a reason they want to work here. I still carry my lunch every day. Still pack a little extra. Because you never know when someone might need it. And I make a point of walking through every facility regularly. Not in expensive suits. In normal clothes. Making myself accessible. Stopping to talk to people. Asking if they need help. Because I learned something important that day. I was 47 minutes late to meet the CEO. The most important thing you can do in any organization isn't to be on time or to look busy or to impress executives. It's to see people. Really see them. And help when you can. That's what leadership actually is. Not authority. Not titles. Not corner offices. It's stopping when someone needs help. Even when you're already late. Especially when you're already late. Because you never know who you're helping. Or what difference that moment of basic human kindness might make. Brian learned that lesson the hard way. He thought leadership was about dominance. About making people feel small so he could feel big. About taking credit and avoiding blame. He was wrong. And he paid for that wrongness with his career. I learned it differently. I learned that leadership is about stopping. About helping. About valuing people not for what they can do for you, but for who they are fundamentally. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I was mocked for being late to meet the new CEO because I'd stopped to help a lost stranger. That stranger was the CEO. And he spent the next 2 years rebuilding the company culture based on the simple principle that kindness matters more than punctuality. Thanks for watching, corporate survivors. Hit that subscribe button. Unless you're my old boss, then you're probably still trying to figure out why humiliating people publicly didn't make you a better leader. Good luck with that self-reflection.